When Toni Braxton told Whitney Houston to come down to where real women sing, nobody in that MTV backstage room knew they were about to witness a vocal battle that would redefine power itself. September 7th, 1995. MTV Video Music Awards, Radio City Music Hall, New York City. The air backstage buzzed with pre-show chaos, dancers stretching, makeup artists rushing, sound engineers shouting into headsets. Awards show pressure hung thick. The energy was electric, but nothing compared to what was about to happen in the vocal warm-up room on the third floor. Whitney Houston, 32 years old, was at the absolute peak of her power. 12 years into her career, she'd sold over 100 million records worldwide. The Voice, that's what everyone called her. She stood in the center of the small rehearsal space, eyes closed, one hand on her diaphragm. Her vocal coach, Patricia, nodded with each perfect note. Tonight she was performing Exhale, Shoop Shoop, from Waiting to Exhale, those crystal clear high notes that had made her a legend. In the room next door, Toni Braxton was preparing for her own performance. At 28, riding high on Breathe Again success, preparing to release You're Making Me High. But Toni had something Whitney didn't, a voice that lived in the basement, deep, sultry, contralto, the kind that didn't soar to heaven. It pulled you down to earth. Bedroom music, the critics called it, sometimes a compliment, sometimes a dismissal. For years, Toni had watched sopranos dominate. Whitney, Mariah, Celine, all celebrated for notes that defied physics. Meanwhile, her contralto got different words: sultry, sexy, intimate, never powerful, never legendary. Through the thin walls, she heard Whitney's high notes, perfect, effortless, and something inside Toni snapped. She'd swallowed this feeling for years, that her low register was somehow less than, that real power required altitude. She walked into Whitney's warm-up room without knocking. Whitney was mid-run, her vocal coach nodding approval, Clive Davis sitting in the corner like a proud father. The room fell silent when Toni entered. "That's beautiful, Whitney," Toni said, her voice calm but loaded. "But can you do that down here?" She gestured to her throat, indicating the low register. Whitney stopped mid-note. "Excuse me?" Don't miss what Toni said next. It changed everything. "You live in the high notes," Toni continued, stepping closer. "The soprano stratosphere. Every diva does. But real power, real emotion, that lives down here, where I sing. Come down to my register and show me you're not just a high note specialist." The room went cold. Clive Davis stood up immediately. "Whitney doesn't need to prove anything to—" Whitney raised her hand, cutting him off. "No, Clive, let her talk." Babyface, Toni's producer, appeared in the doorway, alarmed. "Toni, what are you doing?" "I'm tired," Toni said, her eyes locked on Whitney. "Tired of high voices getting all the respect. Tired of people acting like soprano is the only powerful register. Low voices matter too." Whitney studied Toni for a long moment. Everyone in the room held their breath. The voice was being challenged, on her own turf, at the biggest music event of the year. Then Whitney smiled, not a friendly smile, a competitor's smile. "Okay," Whitney said quietly. "You want me in your register? Let's go. But if I come down to your world, you come up to mine. Deal?" Toni didn't hesitate. Deal. But what neither of them expected was how much this challenge would reveal about their own voices. Whitney cleared the room. Only 5 people allowed to stay. Babyface at the piano, Whitney's vocal coach, Clive Davis observing from the corner, and 2 MTV crew members who happened to be in the wrong place at the right time. "Rules," Whitney announced. "No microphones. Pure acoustic. You pick the song for your register, I pick the song for mine." Toni nodded. "Unbreak My Heart. It's my next single. I know every note." Whitney had never heard it. Sing it. What happened next was pure vocal seduction. Toni started Unbreak My Heart in her natural deep contralto. Low, resonant, intimate. Her voice didn't soar. It sank into your chest and stayed there. Each word came out like a secret shared between lovers. Sensual without trying. Powerful in a way that had nothing to do with volume or range. The kind of voice that made you lean in closer to hear secrets. Her vibrato was tight and controlled. her pitch perfect in a register most female singers avoided. This was Toni's territory, and she owned every inch of it. Whitney watched intently, her professional instincts cataloging every technical choice, the breath control, the placement, the way Toni used the natural resonance of her chest voice to create warmth without force. It was impressive, different from anything Whitney had trained to do. When she finished, the room was silent. Even Whitney looked impressed. Patricia, Whitney's vocal coach, was nodding slowly, processing what she just heard. "Your turn," Toni said. "Sing it low, like I just did." Whitney stepped forward, took a breath, and tried. The first notes came out thin, breathy, lacking the resonance that made Toni's low register so powerful. Whitney pushed harder, trying to force depth, but it sounded strained, wrong. She stopped, frustrated. "This isn't my voice." Toni couldn't help the small smirk. "Exactly. You're not built for this." But then something shifted in Whitney, and nobody saw it coming. Clive started to interrupt. "Whitney, you don't have to." "Clive." Whitney's voice was sharp. "I got this." She closed her eyes, took a different kind of breath, not from her diaphragm for power, but from somewhere deeper, from memory, from the New Hope Baptist Church in Newark, where she'd first learned to sing, from her mother Sissy's voice, which could drop low and shake the rafters with gospel authority, from the church mothers who sang alto and made the walls tremble. And this time, when she sang, something changed. She wasn't trying to copy Toni's sultry tone. She was finding her own low-register voice, not bedroom sensual like Toni, but powerful in a completely different way. Gospel-rooted, church elder depth. The voice of women who'd been through fire and came out singing. The voice of testimony, of witness, of survival. Her low notes carried the weight of Sunday mornings and Wednesday night prayer meetings. They carried her mother's legacy and her grandmother's strength. The room went dead silent. Even the MTV crew members, who'd been fussing with equipment, stopped moving. Toni's smirk disappeared. She stared at Whitney with something like shock, maybe even a touch of fear. That's not what I expected." Whitney opened her eyes. "Low register isn't just sultry, Toni. It can be gospel, too. It can be testimony. Your turn to come up." Now it was Toni's turn to look nervous. Whitney chose "I Have Nothing," her power ballad from The Bodyguard. She started singing, and it was effortless. High notes that seemed to cost her nothing. Soprano runs that were pure crystalline perfection, showing off maybe, but also showing Toni exactly how high the mountain was. When Whitney finished, she looked at Toni. "Your turn. Sing it high." Toni took a breath and tried. She reached for the high notes, pushed her voice up, strained for the soprano range. But it was clear immediately. This wasn't her instrument. The notes were there technically, but they sounded forced, tight, uncomfortable. She stopped. My voice doesn't go there naturally." Whitney nodded, echoing Toni's earlier words. "Exactly. You're not built for this." For a moment, they just stared at each other. Two of the greatest voices of their generation. Both proven right, both proven limited. And then Whitney said something that changed everything. "Wait," Whitney said suddenly. "We're doing this wrong." Toni frowned. "What do you mean?" "We're trying to beat each other," Whitney said, her voice softer now. "But that's not what voices are for. Your low register isn't weak because it's low. My high register isn't better because it's high. They're just different. Different tools for different emotions." Babyface spoke up from the piano. "That's what I've been trying to tell the industry for years, but nobody listens." Whitney continued, looking directly at Toni. "When you sing low, you sound like a woman who's been through something. Intimate, real, heartbreak in a bedroom. When I sing high, I sound like hope, gospel, reaching for God, celebration. Neither is better. They're just different stories." Toni was quiet for a long moment. Then, "So what if we didn't compete? What if we collaborated? Your highs, my lows. Same song. Let's show them what happens when two registers work together instead of against each other." What happened next became legendary in music industry folklore. They chose Greatest Love of All, Whitney's anthem, but restructured. Whitney would take the verses high, gospel and inspirational. Toni would take the chorus low, making self-love intimate instead of aspirational. Then they'd harmonize on the bridge, soprano over contralto. Babyface started playing. Whitney began the first verse high and soaring, full of hope and gospel power. Then Toni came in for the second verse, transforming the same melody into something sultry and grounded. Self-love is a sensual, earthy thing. When they hit the bridge and harmonized, high register, floating over low register, something magical happened. The two voices created a fullness that neither could achieve alone. Soprano and contralto, heaven and earth, aspiration and intimacy, all woven together. The MTV crew members who'd been pretending to work stopped. Mary J. Blige, walking past the room, heard it and came in. TLC's T-Boz followed. Soon there were 10 people crowded in the doorway, silent, witnessing something that wasn't supposed to happen. Clive Davis had tears in his eyes. Babyface was recording everything on a small handheld tape recorder, his hands shaking slightly. When the song ended, nobody spoke for several seconds. Then Whitney broke the silence. "I've been singing high my whole life because that's what people expect. The voice, the power. But sometimes," she touched her chest, her lower register. "Sometimes I'm tired of reaching up. Sometimes I want to sing from here." Toni nodded slowly. "I've been singing low my whole life because that's where I'm comfortable, safe. But watching you reach those high notes, there's a freedom in that, like you're touching heaven." Whitney smiled, a real smile this time. "We're both right, and we're both limited. But together, Toni finished, we're complete." But neither of them knew how much this moment would change their careers. After the show, Whitney pulled Clive aside. "Why don't we ever put contralto singers on the radio?" Clive sighed. "Because high voices sell, Whitney. Soprano is commercial." "That's bullshit," Whitney said flatly. "Toni's voice is just as powerful as mine, just in a different way." Meanwhile, Toni was having a similar conversation with Babyface. "Can we write something that uses both my low and high registers? I'm tired of hiding in the basement." "That's what I've been waiting for you to say," Babyface replied. The impact was immediate. When Unbreak My Heart dropped in 1996, it spent 11 weeks at #1. Toni owned her low register completely. No apologies, no compromises. Producers had wanted to pitch it up for radio. After that MTV night, she refused. It became the biggest selling single by a female artist that year. Whitney's 1996 I Believe in You and Me featured more low-register moments than anything she'd done before. Houston ventures into new territory, Billboard wrote, exploring the depths of her range with surprising emotional resonance. She wasn't just the voice in the stratosphere anymore. Both women credited that MTV night in interviews, but kept details private, a shared secret between professionals who'd learned something profound. Babyface's handheld recording was never officially released. Legal issues, label conflicts. But musicians in the industry have heard it. There's a legendary bootleg circulating among vocalists. The night two queens found their crowns. Vocal coaches use it in masterclasses. It's become music mythology. In 2000, Whitney called Toni after He Wasn't Man Enough became a hit. "You remember MTV 1995? Whitney asked. "How could I forget?" Toni laughed. "You taught me I didn't have to apologize for singing low." "You taught me I didn't have to live in the stratosphere," Whitney replied. When Whitney died in 2012, Toni released a statement that quoted that 1995 moment. "Whitney taught me that voices aren't in competition, they're in conversation." Today, Toni Braxton is 57. In a recent interview, she reflected on that night. "Whitney and I both learned something crucial that night. Your voice is your signature. Don't let anyone tell you it's wrong because it's different. Whitney's high notes were her heaven. My low notes are my truth. Both are valid, both are powerful." The music industry still favors sopranos, but contraltos like me have a place now, partly because of that night, because the voice said, "Come down to where I usually don't go." And I said, "I'll meet you in the middle." Sometimes the most powerful moments in music history happen when two voices stop competing and start listening. Whitney Houston and Toni Braxton didn't just exchange notes that September night in 1995. They exchanged respect. And in doing so, they reminded the world that power doesn't live in one register. It lives in the courage to honor your own voice, whether it soars to the heavens or resonates from the depths of the soul. The challenge that started as a confrontation became a collaboration. The battle became a duet, and two queens who thought they had nothing in common discovered they were singing the same song in different keys. That's not just a backstage moment. That's legacy.